A young Ukrainian model looking to advance her career traveled to one of the world's most glamorous cities. But now she says her dream vacation turned into a nightmare when she agreed to spend time with a young Russian man and his friends. We're digging into her recovery after being found nearly dead on the side of the road in Dubai and what she says happened to her back in the spring. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner, in for Jesse Weber. We have new information in a case we first told you about a few months ago, involving 20-year-old OnlyFans model Maria Kovalchuk. She was missing for 10 days back in March after reportedly attending a party in Dubai. The Ukrainian model was found battered along the side of the road with medical personnel cataloging a slew of injuries, including shattered limbs, bruising, and lacerations, and even a broken spine. She was in a coma for a while in the hospital and reportedly underwent multiple major surgeries. After a few months in recovery with her mother Anna in Norway, Maria, known to her friends and many online fans as Mary Lou, relies on crutches and a wheelchair as she learns to walk again. And in the meantime, she is speaking about what she says really happened to her. And that's providing a better timeline for what happened, when, and who may have been involved. Maria sat down for an interview with high-profile Russian TV presenter Zina Sobchak. Promotional footage of the interview shows a large scar across Maria's forehead, allegedly obtained when she was attacked while in Dubai. When Maria was first reported missing, there was a lot of speculation about what happened to her, whether she had been kidnapped and sold into sexual slavery, perhaps after attending what was referred to as porter potty parties. And yes, you heard that right. These are evidently lavish parties thrown by some of the richest men in Dubai, where young women are paid huge sums of money to be degraded and abused. They got their names because the women lured to these events are often treated as human toilets. There were reported rapes, beatings, and even deaths. But Maria told the reporter men from the United Arab Emirates weren't involved in that harrowing ordeal. According to Maria's interview, she was traveling in Dubai to try to push forward her modeling career. She overslept and missed a flight to Thailand, where she was supposed to be meeting with her friends. At her hotel, she says she bumped into a Russian man she had met once before, and he invited her to stay in his room, saying that they could fly to Thailand together on his father's private jet. He had 3 friends with him, a woman and 2 other men, and they all spent the day together. But Maria says things started to take a dark turn the next day when the young Russian and Ukrainian men started to get aggressive with her and hinted that they wanted to have sex with her. Here's part of what she had to say in the interview. They started to joke, "You belong to us. We'll do whatever you want." I tried to take it as a joke because it was really weird. They started behaving inappropriately, smashing bottles on the floor. The entire floor was strewn with broken glass. After that, they took my personal belongings, which included my passport. Maria also claims that the woman who had been with them put on one of Maria's dresses and walked right out of the door in it. According to Maria, she tried to leave the hotel room too, but she was dragged back inside. She said she managed to escape when the men went out onto the room's balcony, reportedly running into an empty building nearby that was under construction wearing only a hotel robe. She said she tried to hide, but the men found her. Maria told the interviewer that she doesn't remember the actual violence that led to her horrific injuries, saying, "Most likely there was a blow to the head, I suppose. The next scene I remember is me asking for help from a passing car, which had already stopped and called an ambulance and the police. I think that maybe I was thrown, or it was a beating, one of 2 options. The injuries looked like either a beating or a fall." Maria's catastrophic injuries would be consistent with a fall. She said in the interview that there was a security video of at least part of the chase or attack, but claimed that Dubai police intentionally waited months to access it, giving the system time to overwrite the footage. Despite the accusation that police may have been trying to cover up the bad behavior, Maria's mother told the interviewer that the cost of her daughter's medical treatments in Dubai believed to have run into the millions, and that they were paid for by local authorities in exchange for her not saying anything to cast the United Arab Emirates in a bad light. According to reporting from the outlets like The Sun and the Daily Mail, the men Maria accused of attacking her were detained briefly by Dubai authorities, but released, and it appears they won't be facing any kind of charges. I want to thank Odoo for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. Odoo is a powerful all-in-one business software that helps you manage everything from sales to accounting and, yes, manufacturing. Schedule your production, manage your assembly line, and fine-tune your work orders with Odoo's all-in-one easy-to-use platform. Need fully assembled manufacturing software that'll put your business ahead of schedule? Well, Odoo has you covered. Plus, Odoo's manufacturing app syncs seamlessly with your sales, your inventory, and purchasing modules, so everything stays connected and running smoothly. Check out Odoo to take your manufacturing process to the next level and get a free 15-day trial today at odoo.com/sidebarmanufacturing. Well, to talk about these disturbing new details, I want to welcome back international attorney David Tafuri. David, thank you so much for joining me. And you were on Sidebar, probably with Jesse, to talk about this when this case first began and Maria was first discovered on that Dubai roadside. What do you make of Maria's latest interview?
Well, lots of surprises here. There was speculation when we first did the show about this story that maybe she had been taken to one of these porta potty sex parties in Dubai and that she had been abused there. But at that time, she was in the hospital and she couldn't speak, so she hadn't been able to tell her story yet. Now she's told her story, and it's a bit different than what people expected. Apparently, she was actually beaten and abused by some Russians. She met one Russian who brought her to a party with some other Russians, and the abuse happened there.
And what do you make of just seeing those images of the visible scarring that she has? And she also admitted that she now has to use a wheelchair and she gets around using crutches. It's really sad, but honestly, she's just very lucky to be alive. But what do you make overall about the injuries that she sustained that she still seems to be recovering from?
Yeah, it's really concerning that she went through this. She obviously has very serious injuries. She was in the hospital for a long time. She's still recovering. Very difficult circumstances for her and for her mother and others in her family. There's also an aspect of this that feels like she's sort of the underdog. She's up against the big system here. She tried to deal with the Dubai police and to go after the people that she thinks were responsible. It doesn't seem like she's going to get justice, or she certainly doesn't have anything that it would be what we would call justice at this point. And that's also concerning because if you don't get justice in a case like this could happen again to another young woman.
And what do you make overall about the sex trafficking conspiracy aspect to this case? What do you think that kind of pointed investigators into that particular direction?
Well, it's not clear if this is sort of a one-off situation. This young man that she met led her into these horrible circumstances, whether this was just the first time he and his friends have done this before, or whether there is a pattern here of them doing this to other women. And because of her injuries and how serious they were, her incident was reported and others were not. There's also an interesting, concerning aspect of this that she's Ukrainian. So she's a Ukrainian national in Dubai. The perpetrators of violence against her are Russian. There's no information to suggest this links to the conflict in Ukraine as a result of the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But that could be also part of this. Did these Russians, in sort of an act of nationalism, attack her because she's Ukrainian, or think that she's less human because she's Ukrainian, has less rights because she's Ukrainian? That would also be a very concerning aspect of this, because it could put other Ukrainians abroad in jeopardy and danger as well.
And I also want to go back to a point that you had made earlier about like the whole porta potty parties. Now, it's something that I've seen kind of on social media where people talk about these really degrading parties against people who are wanting to be models or influencers. And in this case, she was an OnlyFans model. But in terms of the whole porta potty parties, have you ever heard of these before? Or have you heard of these maybe and they're called something completely different? But, you know, the whole gist of it is being that they're essentially kind of what the name is, where these women are brought to these parties and they're degraded upon, kind of similar to the way the name is, if that makes sense.
Well, I've spent a good amount of time in Dubai and in the United Arab Emirates. I had never heard of these parties. I'd never read about them or heard about them from anyone. But when we did the last story, I learned about it as a result of preparing for that story. And I was pretty shocked that this exists. It seems to be somewhat commonplace in Dubai, very well known. And a lot of women have found themselves entrapped into very difficult situations. So I'm surprised that Dubai, which is, you know, a very conservative culture, would allow this to go on. And I certainly hope that the Dubai authorities are doing everything they can to discourage these types of parties and to crack down on those who engage in violence against women.
And how important to this story do you think is the whole aspect of money and influence and power, where, you have kind of, we're in a digital age nowadays. A lot of people are kind of becoming accustomed to getting their career started online, where they may have fans, followers, and these women are kind of putting themselves in a way in these vulnerable positions in order to kind of make money. And maybe they would end up in situations that they would normally not end up in. But in terms of just overall this aspect of beautiful young woman who is degraded and demeaned, allegedly, in this case, and then something like this happens where now she is still recovering from her injuries after being brutally beaten and left for dead on the side of the road. But do you see this kind of commonality in these cases, especially overseas versus maybe here in the U.S.?
I think that's a significant and interesting part of this, that these social media influencers seem to be the targets of these violent parties. In the case of the porta potty, in the case of this young woman from Ukraine, she was also a social media influencer and model, and maybe she was targeted because of that as well. It's a bit concerning. You wonder if people in Dubai somehow think that gives them some additional right to be violent towards women like that because they don't approve of their social media activities. It's not clear, but it should be very concerning, especially for the younger generation around the world who are, very active on social media. They shouldn't be targeted because of it.
Right, and especially because a lot of young women may think like, oh, this is something to look up to because they're seeing the glamorous parts of it. They're seeing the jet setting, and they're seeing the beautiful handbags, and they're seeing all the great aspects to it. But then there's kind of this underbelly that's kind of going on behind the scenes that a lot of people may not be aware of. And in your opinion, these are just allegations, and we do have to say that here. But do you think that sex trafficking allegations are handled a little bit differently overseas than they are compared to here in the U.S.?
I think that's right. I think the United States has, and other Western countries have done a good job of highlighting the dangers of sex trafficking. And our State Department, for instance, has ratings for countries that are not doing well on combating sex trafficking. And the State Department and our diplomats push this issue in countries where there are sex trafficking problems. So there's been a lot of effort to highlight the dangers of sex trafficking, but there are still a lot of countries around the world where I don't think it's taken seriously, where it's been maybe part of the culture for many years. And so they're less concerned about it continuing to go on in these modern days, even though it's a bit shocking when you see the underbelly of it, as we did in this case in a way.
And going back to the whole kind of conspiracy aspect of this case and just the case overall in the investigation, there was kind of this claim that there was surveillance footage of this attack, but investigators kind of waited too long to access it. Do you think it was wiped? Do you think that someone took it? Do you think that they just moved too slowly in this investigation, and that's why they no longer have access to this footage? Why do you think that we can no longer see, or investigators can no longer see, what happened to Maria?
I was very interested in that story, and I couldn't learn anything from the reporting that I found other than what she claims, which is that she believed that there was CCTV footage that would have helped prove her story about how she was attacked and how she sustained her injuries, and that for some reason she believes that the Dubai authorities didn't act quickly enough to secure that footage and preserve it, and that somehow it was erased. I haven't seen anything else. I haven't seen a response from the Dubai authorities. Certainly, it's possible that the police in Dubai did not take this case seriously, that maybe they were even had so little concern for it that they wanted to protect the alleged perpetrators. But we really don't know without more information and evidence. We don't know what happened with this footage. But obviously, in the United States, one of the first things that would happen when an investigation happened is you would secure that footage and preserve it.
And I think it's really brave for Maria to speak out, especially speaking out so publicly about this, going to, a news reporter and speaking about her story. But in your opinion, do you think that there's kind of a counter to that, where maybe she might be putting herself in danger? Again, and commending her bravery for speaking about this, because I can only imagine what it's like for her to do that, especially after everything she's been through. But do you think that that presents any type of danger towards her?
Well, I think it's very brave for her to speak out, as you said. One other oddity about this case is she apparently spoke to a Russian reporter from a Russian media company. And it's surprising to me, given that the violence she alleges was perpetrated against her by Russians, that she would have chosen a Russian journalist instead of choosing, for instance, a Western journalist or a Ukrainian journalist or even a Middle East journalist where this crime occurred. And so I would hope that other journalists will reach out to her, and perhaps from more substantive media platforms where there's a more trusted source to understand better the case. And I hope she will talk to more media. And if she really wanted justice, what she would do is hire a lawyer, and she would have that lawyer go to Dubai, and he would press the Dubai authorities to explain what they did in this investigation, why they didn't do more, why some of the evidence seems to have slipped through the cracks. You would hold a press conference, invite lots of press to come and speak to the press very candidly about the situation. And that might gin up more anger about this case and force the Dubai authorities to do a better job of seeking justice. At least from what she claims, it doesn't sound like they did their job here.
And for those who are trying to travel overseas internationally, do you think that Maria's story is kind of a cautionary tale? Do you think it's kind of an outlier possibly in terms of people who are just wanting to travel, who may have a following for themselves, or who are, OnlyFans models, or they're influencers or content creators or stuff like that, and they go to different portions of the world? Do they need to kind of look out for specific things, behaviors, while they're traveling overseas?
Well, I think this is definitely a cautionary tale for women, especially women with similar profiles as she has. And I think that you always need to be careful when you travel and you're going out and experiencing the nightlife, not to go somewhere in a private party with someone you don't know, where you're going to be with lots of people that you don't know, which is what happened here. I think Dubai and the UAE, they remain very safe countries. There's not a lot of crime in the United Arab Emirates, but there is a seedy underbelly to it. And if you put yourself in a situation like this, you could be taken advantage of, as she was.
And I'm hoping that she has a speedy recovery and she continues her process of healing, because I can only, again, imagine everything that she's going through. But again, very brave of her to speak out and tell the world what had happened to her. David Tafuri, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, is there anything else you would like to add? Do you think that possibly some arrests might be made in the future?
Well, I hope that she hires a lawyer to do what I mentioned, which is to, get attention for this case and put more pressure on the police and the prosecutors to explain why they haven't brought anyone to justice. From what she has told about the current situation, it doesn't sound like she's going to get justice unless she does that.
Just horrible, because I hope with all of our cases that everyone's able to get justice in their case, especially for Maria too. David Tafuri, thank you again so much for your insight. I really appreciate having you on Sidebar today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that does it for this episode. To watch more episodes, head over to our Law&Crime YouTube page or subscribe to us anywhere you get your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I'm Elizabeth Millner in for Jesse Weber, and this has been Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime.